How's it going, YouTube? Oxa here, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be reviewing Men, the newest A24 horror joint. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I do see that it is divisive among a lot of people, and I just want to clear some things up. But do I think you should see it? Yes, I genuinely think it's really good. And some of the messaging or what this movie is trying to get across, I think is important, or at least it's worthwhile. It's got a good message, and I think people are going into this film maybe expecting something else, and that's like the disconnect. But yeah, so minor spoilers, nothing crazy, but you've been warned. But I do recommend go see the movie first and then come right back. But yes, the newest Alex Garland joint, he previously directed, for example, Ex Machina, Annihilation, and if you go farther back, 28 Days Later, which I was like, oh shit, he directed that? Like, that's pretty cool. It's like a good zombie movie. But yeah, in this movie, we follow, our character, Mrs. Marlowe, or I forget her first name, played by Jessie Buckley, who does a fantastic job. And I guess the awesome thing is that this film is literally like 4 characters, like at most, because we're introduced to Jeffrey, played by Rory Kinnear. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. But seriously, fantastic job. Because of course from the trailers, or if you've heard, he plays like 10 different characters, they're all him. And he does a great job. Jeffrey especially is a standout, just to give that, because at the same time, he's very welcoming, as a character. But also, the scene where, Jesse's character, right? Jessie Buckley, where she grabs the apple, eats it, a la Adam and Eve, right? Eve eating from the tree of knowledge. There's a lot of religious undertones in this movie. When she eats it or says, yeah, I ate an apple, and he's like, oh no, you mustn't do that. The way it's framed, or the way he says it, you're like, ooh, there's something off about this guy. And yeah, Rory does a fantastic job with all the weird characters he plays. Some hit or miss. I mean, some are just there for extra bodies. But he plays a little boy, and I will say that was one that took me out of the film, is that the deep fake on it is pretty rough. Or every time I saw the boy's face, I'm like, yeah, it looks like CGI. He didn't look real. Whereas all the other characters, at least you're like, okay, that looks like a guy, And yeah, he'll have different hair and whatnot, but it's like, oh, makeup and that sort of thing. But the little boy was like, oof, that looked rough. But yeah, the film, honestly, it deals with, I'll just call her, Miss Marlowe. It deals with her character's, I guess, guilt. So in the beginning of the film, we learned that her ex-husband, or they were husband because they hadn't divorced yet, they were going to divorce, kills himself. And throughout the film we get flashback scenes, or getting more of what happened, and how the guy very is very manipulative and is trying to pass the guilt on to her, I'm gonna kill myself, and you're gonna have to live with that. And it's a very, scary thought of, there are people out there like that. And yes, so essentially, Mrs. Marlowe goes on a retreat, right? A getaway for her to, just relax, clear her mind. And, of course, the events of the film play out, and it's, not all is what it seems. But the one thing I wanted to say is that, so the film is definitely, it's about the women and their experience in society and in the world. Because in the sense, at least, again, this is just my interpretation, how Rory, he plays all the males, right? I think it's supposed to give off the idea that, in most women's eye, or for example, in, Miss Marlowe's, it's oh, all men are the same. Because literally, they're played by the same actor in the movie of the small little village, right? Like on the countryside somewhere in, Europe. They're literally all the same person. And at the end, of course, we find out they are. They literally are. They're the same, like, creature or whatever. And the film just deals with that, like, women's, like, troubles and, like, what they have to deal with, That, like, a lot of the different characters in the films, like the vicar, the priest, like, try to pass the blame onto her, that they're like, you're the reason that he died, that her husband died. And they just, like, deal with that. Like, I guess, for example, it's like, it's also maybe with, like, paranoia of, like, women, like, you hear the saying, like, oh, like, you can't go out at night alone because what could happen, you could potentially, the word rhymes with grape, YouTube isn't too, you can't really use that word, but I think you get it. Like, I think that's what it tries to get across, just, like, what women go through, Like, think, you have Miss Marlowe, who had this traumatic experience, right? Like, her husband literally kills himself in front of her. She goes off to retreat alone, right? Away from everybody. And even then, she's still, there's like a creep. There's still, like, it's like somehow still, like, there is no escape for them. Because there was a lot of, like, cycles, or, like, in the film, there was a lot of, like, repeating, or, like, gave off kind of like a purgatory vibe, where it's like you can't escape, and probably ties into, like, the guilt too, like, oh, the guilt that she may feel, like, partially responsible for her, I believe the name was Jerome, like, her husband's death. And yeah, it just deals with that, like, societal, I guess, like, how in society and also religion, women are usually, put thought of as less. I mean, take the Bible, for example. And hey, I'm not coming after anyone's religion, but, it was Eve who was deceived, right? Or, like, was the one that took the bait from, Lucifer, and ate from the fruit, right? The tree of knowledge. And essentially, yes, it's the devil's fault, but essentially, she was the catalyst, right, for why humans are not immortal. And you get that. Or, like, you really look at it, or, like, how, I mean, God only had, what, male disciples? There were no women. It's like, huh? I guess it's, the film just brings light to that, like, women are constantly kept under, and then expected to just fall in line, and that sort of thing. And I guess that's the thing, that a lot of people just expected this to be like some scary slasher, or, like, monster movie, that sort of thing. And the movie, like, look, it's genuinely creepy. There are scenes that are, like, genuinely, like, the tension is there. And especially towards the end, like, it gets just, like, what the, like, wild, like, spoiler, major spoiler, like, at the very end, when you find out that Rory's characters are all one being, or, like, one idea, right? Because we don't know if it's all in her head. Like, it's literally like the tree, like, spirit or tree man, and then it gives birth, like, 4 times, like, literally through the different like, so the different characters, and then it ends with her husband, like, there, and she comes to terms with, his death. And, like, yeah, it's a very weird movie. It's definitely one you gotta watch repeatedly, but it does a good job. Like, I like the film, or, like, what it's trying to say, what it brings attention to. But I can tell that some people aren't gonna like that, or it's gonna, like, fly over their heads, because people walked out in the theater. Like, there were a couple people that walked out, like, during the middle of the film. One guy, at least in the screening I saw, one guy, as soon as the first, like, the dude started giving birth, he just was like, nope, I'm out of here, never came back. And I was just like, oh, it's a good film, though. I liked it. I will say it's abstract, right? It is out there, and maybe not all of its messaging is clear, or, it's like you do have to piece it a little, you got to think a little bit to really get the ideas going on. But it's fun. So if I had to rate it 1 through 10, I'd give Men a solid 8. It wasn't perfect by any means. There were some things that I felt like weren't executed properly. But again, it's like, hey, I mean, I got it. I liked it. And the film delivered. You know, it was genuinely a creepy film. And yeah, it does pick up. And it just makes you think. It's like, huh, you know, like, it just brings us to light that, you know, society isn't all it's made out to be. But yeah, guys, those are just my thoughts. I know it's a little like, huh? It's a weird film. I'll say that. It was definitely one I walked out thinking, but that's how you can tell it's a good film, right? It's one that sticks with you, and you're trying to figure it out, trying to like see what the director had in mind, right? Like what the team, everybody was trying to get across. Go see it. I recommend it. And yeah, if you like this type of content, I make new videos every Tuesday and Saturday. No excuses, every week. And please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good jazz. And as always, everybody, I've been your host, Oxy. Take care, and I'll see you next time.